What's going on, lifers? Welcome to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas, and today's guest in the studio with us is coming all the way from Hawaii. How he got lost in Austin by way of Hawaii is going to be another story, but he is the founder of Nose to Tail. He's the founder of the Sapien Center here in Austin. He's also the creator behind the Food Lies documentary and the man behind the account Food Lies itself, Mr. Brian Sanders. Thanks for being here, man.
Jake, what's up, man?
It's good to have you. And to the news you just dropped on me that you're about to head out of town for 6 weeks back to Hawaii. What's that up?
Yeah, well, I did have a long journey. Born and raised in Hawaii. I made it out to LA. I went to UCLA. I was a mechanical engineer. And then I spent way too long there. Right? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
All my friends went to SC. My brother went to SC. It's okay. It's all right. Second place is not bad. I got into SC too. I just didn't want to go there.
It's a great first start.
Yeah. So, yeah, going home, visit the friends, get some sun, get some warmth.
How'd you find Austin from there? I mean, like, obviously LA, but like, what was your, you go from Hawaii to California. That's pretty normal. Like, a lot of people migrate there, I feel like, from the island to the mainland, first place to stop. But then what about going from California to Texas? Yeah.
Oh, no one makes it out to Texas from Hawaii. They're scared of Texas. They think everyone here has like a gun and like a cowboy hat, and maybe they do actually. So the Hawaii people are a little bit scared. But there's a health scene. I saw this health scene building. I started visiting here about 10 years ago just for random trips, and then started going to conferences here. And yeah, this place is where it's at. Really, in the past 4 years, it's been, I think, the new cultural capital of the US and even the world, right? It's just people are just congregating here. Podcasters are moving here, comedians, health people, fitness people. It's just a new place to be. And I wanted to be part of that and open the Sapien Center and just do some more in-person stuff instead of all the online stuff that I was doing.
For sure. So like, that's a great point. The Sapien Center, I remember when that was first coming about and like seeing kind of the hype and just the idea behind it of like, wow, a co-working / clubhouse / communal space where people can talk, biohack. Obviously you guys got like cold plunges and saunas and a gym space and outdoor space there and just the inside. But I was like, finally something like this exists, as opposed to like having to piecemeal it like I'd been doing, where I go to this place to go to the sauna, I go to this place for a cold plunge, I maybe have to go to this coffee shop to be around the right kinds of people. You know what I mean? Like it was very put together as opposed to having one kind of structure. So when I first saw that coming out, I was like, damn, I want to go to Austin.
Yeah, that's exactly why I did it. Yeah, it was fragmented. And yeah, in LA, there was some places, like you said, you have to piece it together. And I just knew there would be a way to do it in Austin and just get everyone in one place. And yeah, I think there's a lot of components to health. And it's like the food stuff, the nutrition, the movement, the outdoors and sun. But one of the big pillars is community, right? And the blue zones are mostly bad. The idea of the blue zones is kind of plant-based, but there's so much good stuff to these concepts of community and purpose. And these people live a long time because they have a tight-knit community.
Yeah. Was there, I guess chicken or egg kind of thing? Was it Nose to Tail first, Sapien Center, or like who spawned?
Oh, yeah.
One spawned the other?
Yeah, Food Lies. So that's what started it all. Just started making this series 7.5 years ago. And I just changed my health very easily by changing my diet 10 years ago. Lost both my parents around then. And so that woke me up. I got into this health world. And so I just made a website. It was super random. I was a nobody, I had no followers, no nothing. And I just was like, I'm going to make this, and started contacting people that I looked up to and that these doctors and scientists that I listened to their podcasts or read their books. And then everything built from there. Then I started my podcast, Peak Human, which has been great along the way. 220 episodes, just really great people. Learned a lot. You can kind of see the journey of my learning along the way, but it was kind of a good accompaniment to making the film because people couldn't see what I was doing. So I got to put out content along the way. Right. And then I started the Food Lies account on Instagram with no real plan. And then, so that started growing. And then I didn't want to take sponsors to my podcast.
Nice.
right? Like I saw what was going on. It's like part of the problems with how the world works is that money drives a lot of things, right? And advertisers drive things, and the news, right? All the mainstream media, all these magazines, everything in the mainstream media is driven by processed foods and pharmaceutical ads. So even though, of course, I wasn't going to take money from, pharma and big, but I still just didn't want to have any ties financially to anyone, even if I believed in them. So I just was, I have to start my own company to sponsor my podcast.
Nice.
So I started Nose to Tail 5 years ago, and that, just slowly grew. And then, it's just evolution. Every few years, I just added something more. And so Sapien Center was the next one, and I could bring everything together, right? We sell Nose to Tail products there, and it just kind of works.
That's awesome. So like one kind of led to the other, getting yourself right, healthy, strong, healed, whatever, finding this thing through Nose to Tail by way of nourishment, then creating a community behind it. So you're kind of like, get myself right, and then poison other people the same way I poison myself in the best way, right?
Exactly. You got to red pill the world.
I think like whether it's like self-discovery or a personal journey of healing or growth, development, whatever, it's selfless by nature, or it's innately selfless, right? If you try to find something like that, like for you, where you like, wow, I changed my diet and I was able to heal my body, or I was able to change my mindset, or I got no longer have depression or anxiety, I'm strong. To hoard that and be selfish about it, I think is almost like contrarian to the whole idea behind it. Whereas opposed to what sounds like you did, and what many other people I feel do in that sense, they find this and they can't wait to be like, you guys got to check this stuff out. You got to try this. Like, I'm not saying I'm totally right or that I'm Jesus Christ and you have to come to the Lord, so to speak, but it's like, I want you to try this, and hopefully maybe you'll feel something in the same way that I feel from it. Is that kind of like what that logical sequence is?
It really was. For some reason, when I find that something is really easy, I just want to tell the world. It's like I made these simple changes in my diet and lifestyle, and it was so impactful, and I just want to tell others. I don't know why. It's just, maybe it's an engineer in me. It's kind of this idea that like efficiency, or just do it, guy. Like, you don't want to keep it.
Efficiency.
Well, you don't want to keep it to yourself. Yeah. It's just, it was so benefit. And a lot of people do that, right? In the health world, and they get so excited. But it's interesting. I noticed along the way that the vegans, so this is kind of our counterparts, and they kind of do the same thing, right? So they get really zealous about it, and then they try to spread their word. And so I found out that it's not always great if you just do the one thing that a lot of people find the one thing that works for them initially, and then they buy into that completely. Yeah. So this is a little lesson I learned along the way. And so I looked at the vegans, and I try to look at all sides, and they are eating whole foods, supposedly, unless you're processed vegan, trash food person. But of course, you go away from the standard American diet and you get healthy. And so then they get really zealous about it. But that's not the end of the story, especially when it's vegan. Yeah. Right. Then they start developing all the deficiencies. And so, I can't, I don't want to get down on people for spreading the word, but sometimes it might not be the right word.
The zeitgeist can favor one side to the other too, depending on the narrative. I feel like, you talk about losing your parents, man, like both same time that those 10 years ago.
Oh yeah. So, my dad had prostate cancer. And so my mom had Alzheimer's. So she actually took many years to finally pass, but she was in a vegetative state for the last 2.5 years of her life. And so I say, to keep it simple, that I lost them, but it was around the same time when, I lost my dad, and then she was kind of pretty gone. And so these are these chronic diseases that people blame on genetics. Right? A lot of time, if you ask a mainstream person and you talk about cancer or Alzheimer's, they're just like, oh, I hope I don't have those genes.
Sure.
And along the way, I've learned that that's not really how it works. It's, there's a classic phrase, your genes can load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. So that's what I found. And actually, through some interviews with some really great PhDs, I learned more about Alzheimer's. People, they get these tests, and you can look at your genes, and it's ApoE4, and you can test for that and see if you have the 2, 3, or 4. And if you have the four, you have the highest chances of Alzheimer's supposedly. And so what I learned about it is that that's true, but it's not that you just have ApoE4
and it's defining.
Yes, it's that so it's kind of reversed. It's that those are the most ancient genes, so you are the least adapted to the modern lifestyle, because the modern lifestyle is terrible. The modern diet and lifestyle, processed foods, sedentary, all this stuff. So if you have these I'm not, probably is it? Yeah, it's the alleles. It's like 2 or 1-2. It's whatever the ApoE4 details are. If you have the worst one, it means that you have to live a more ancient lifestyle, more according to your genes. It's so technically they're correct in that you have a higher chance of getting Alzheimer's if you have,
based on the exposure of the modern diet.
Yes, but it's because
which is kind of right.
Terrible. Yes.
Right.
So now I'm more careful.
Sure.
I don't think I'm going to get Alzheimer's at all. I'm
Right.
very confident that
It's like the propensity is essentially higher by way of you're more susceptible to impurity. It's like,
yes.
well, shouldn't that be a good thing almost? Like in a paradoxical way, to be like, hey, it's almost like a higher level of awareness for me.
Motivation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, to keep it aligned, keep my diet and lifestyle. A lot of people have trouble changing their diet and lifestyle, and so you need some motivation. So yeah.
So that was their passing like the beginning of your really delve into that, or did you have your own kind of personal things going on, whether physically or internally, cellularly, stuff like that?
Yeah. So 10 years ago, maybe we'll call it 11 years ago, because I'm 41 now. So I was 30. And it really was around that time. And that's kind of the magic year where you start getting the dad bod. And you kind of think, oh man, I'm 30 and everyone's making excuses. All the mainstream.
Sure. Once you turn 30 and
you can't eat whatever you want anymore. And like, oh yeah, like I can't play sports anymore. I'm 30.
Yeah.
And you just make all these excuses, and people around me were heading that direction. I was heading that direction. And yeah, actually I'll credit Mark Sisson.
Nice.
He's the man. Yeah. I mean, you agree.
Miami Beach local, yeah.
71 years old. He's still super fit, super healthy.
Stand-up paddleboard, looking great on the boardwalk.
He's a legend. I filmed with him for Food Lives. We played Ultimate Frisbee in Miami. He was seriously out sprinting. Like there's like these 20-year-olds that were playing with us. Like 19, like literally 19 and 20. And he was running with them. It was crazy. That's awesome. So read his book, Primal Blueprint. Changed my life. My friends too, there's these two guys in Hawaii. Well, we were in LA at the time, but I grew up with them in Hawaii. They read his book too, made the changes. I saw their body composition completely change. And so, yeah, it was very simple. I cut out, sugar, refined grains, added seed oils, and that's it, right? I was like, oh my God, why doesn't everyone know this?
Yeah. So 10 years. And then like, what was the evolution for you? Like you started adopting it. Was it difficult? Because a lot of people see you now and it's like, okay, he's got all this success and fame, notoriety, whatever you want to call it. Oh, Sapien Center, nose to tail, It's like, you got some wind behind you, momentum. But like, was it hard for you? I mean, like growing up on the island, non-contiguous America, right? So it's a different culture there than mainland. Was it difficult? Yeah, implementing that. Was it pretty simple for you? Was it easy? I mean, simple, yes. Easy or difficult, very different.
Well, diet stuff was not straight. Yeah, it wasn't like it just happened overnight, right? I did some simple things.
And was your condition when you were talking about like dad bod? Were you not in good physical shape?
You can look at my Instagram. I was like puffy.
Nice.
I had like 20 pounds of fat.
We're definitely gonna throw those videos.
Throw it up.
Throw those up for sure.
Like visceral fat. It was inside, but I was just looked chubby and puffy, and I was inflamed. Had
you been that way for a while, or like as a kid?
Yeah, slowly. No. I was super fit all growing up, right? I was always playing sports. I played football, basketball, track, all these things. And so I was kind of getting away with it.
Yeah.
But then into my late 20s, it was catching up to me. And I was doing all the right things. This is the same thing with my family. We were eating the food pyramid, right? We were like the ones that actually followed it. Like we were making our own food. It was a big treat to go out to meals. We didn't go out to eat a lot. My parents were like, thrifty. They're just like, we got to make our own food. We're going to make whole grain pasta and all the whole grains, vegetables, avoiding red meat, like low fat product. It was seriously the food pyramid. Yeah. And I was doing that. I remember because I had these old jobs. I was working as an engineer. I'm making like meal prepping, like whole grain pasta and vegetables and chicken and trying to do it all correctly. And I was just slowly getting worse and worse. I had chronic injuries kind of with computer,
Oh, sure.
right?
Got it,
So
got it,
it's
got
like,
it.
of course, there is the mechanical aspect of me being an engineer and using the computer, but also I'm sitting there eating all these processed grains and processed oils and making it worse. And yeah, I had acid reflux, like heartburn all the time. I had just all these little things, right? Starting to take the over the
But a
counter.
lot of little things
Yeah.
adds up to.
Oh, it is. You taking the over-counter medications. If I kept down that path at 41, I would probably be on like 4 like prescriptions plus the over-the-counter medications. I probably wouldn't be playing beach volleyball all the time like I do now. Yeah. So I really just caught it early. But like I said, it wasn't super straightforward, easy. Like, oh man, I figured it all out. I'm done. I started with the simple things, but I would still go out to eat on the weekends or still, do certain things. And then as the years went on, I got more and more into it. I was like, oh, well, now I'm going to go to the farmer's market and get like the better quality. Yeah. Or now I just don't go out to eat. It's just not on my radar. Yeah. I'm not saying that everyone has to do it. It's once you get there, you're there though. You don't miss it. Yeah. Right? Like people ask me about Austin restaurants. I'm like, I don't really know. I don't know what to tell you.
Same. People like I just moved here, last month. Funnily enough, Brian and I met right away. Like, the kind of clickiness of Austin and being in the right circles. We met like pretty much the first couple of weeks or whatnot that I was here. I just got back from New Orleans yesterday, visiting family and friends and being home for a week and working. Somebody was like, hey man, where'd you go out to eat while you were there? I was like, we only went out one time and it was for a client's birthday. It was to a steakhouse, which was great. Yeah. But everything else was cooked and made at home. Shop with the local butcher who's a friend and a client of mine. Like I want his food. Everything he gets is locally sourced for the most part, or it's going to be extremely well curated to where I was like, I'm literally going to be cooking at home and enjoying the food. So when people are like, hey, what's the new food scene like in New Orleans? I'm like, I really don't know what to tell you, man, because I ate at home. They're like, that's not boring to you? I'm like, it's doing exactly what I wanted to do because it's about how it makes me feel. Not about like what I'm attracted to, like visually, or what kind of like stimulation I'm gonna get from the social experience. It's more important to me to feel that way.
And I want people to know that aren't there yet. It's not that it takes willpower to avoid it. At a certain point, you're just
not into it.
You're just not into it. Yeah. So there's a lot of people think, oh, these guys are crazy. They live these like monk lives. I'm like, not at all. Like, and yeah, I mean, I go out to different events and, I'm trying new foods. It's not like I'm sitting there in my house only eating the same thing. Right. I'm going to potluck things around Austin.
Or like even at the Sapien Center, the dinners that we went to there, the Friendsgiving and whatnot. It's awesome.
And it's like kind of potluck style. Yeah. Everyone's bringing foods. No one's using bad ingredients. Yeah. So yeah, it's not like it takes restriction.
It definitely it was weird at first, kind of like getting into that for me too, because I was like, well, what am I going to be out on my own now? Like, do I not go out with people or how's it go? But slowly but surely, I started meeting people that were doing similar things. And then 1 became 2 and 2 became 4. And then I get to a city like here and I'm like, oh my God, all these people are doing this. Like the first night I went out with some friends here, I was not the only one drinking a mocktail. And there was 3 other people that all ordered them. And I was like, I've never had that happen before. I was always, me kind of solo on my own, but just the sense of community you kind of touched on with the Blue Zones, I think is a really important part of it because it is easy to feel alone. You can feel alone in that sense if you are in a food desert or a cultural desert per se, and you're trying to do this and you're trying to change how you eat, but your family doesn't eat that way, your friends don't eat that way. But the more you do it, like you said, the less appealing, I would say, that other aspect of it becomes.
It really is. It's one of the reasons why I left LA. People were moving away, getting married. There was some other.
It wasn't the taxes that drove you.
You know what? It actually kind of was the government. It was during COVID, and actually, I remember the specific day. I was driving down the PCH from Malibu, and I looked at the beach volleyball courts on the right. If people can know LA at all, and it's all these amazing beach volleyball courts, and the city spent our money to bulldoze piles of sand into the volley. They already took down the nets.
So you couldn't play on?
So you couldn't play because people were bringing their own nets, and heaven forbid someone gets vitamin D and exercise.
Oh, wow.
And so they bulldozed piles of sand, like hundreds of huge piles, so no one could play. And I've said, absolutely done. I'm out.
It's a pretty funny tipping point, but
yeah, but it was just all the lockdowns, restrictions, government, everything with that. I'm just not about that, right? It's our community it's kind of at odds with the mainstream in almost all ways, right? It's going against the grain and the guidelines with the food stuff, but just anything about it, right? Just like pharmaceutical, their solution is always some sort of thing they're selling you and or restriction that they're trying to put on you, right? So I feel like our community is great because it's more independent thinking. And if they're saying like you have to like lock down, you can't go out of your house, it's people are like, well, I'm going to take my health into my own hands. I'm going to decide what I can do, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I like that about our community. It's you kind of unplug from so many things once you start realizing that the nutrition stuff is wrong, and then you're like, oh wait, the pharma stuff is wrong, and then you're like, okay,
what else?
Yeah, most of society is a bit backwards.
It's weird, you know, and it's hard to see that when you are behind all those layers, right? So like at first, if you're eating that food, like you're going to have that type of mindset and mentality. If you're being influenced by this network, you're going to have that type of mindset and mentality. It's all these like signposts of influence, right? So like to try to tap into that, and like you've and I, other people that we know have been like kind of breaking through those layers or trying to break out of those layers. But like at first it's hard, you know, like I grew up in New Orleans. Food is big, you know, I mean, food's big everywhere, but like booze, decadent, rich, heavy,
everything's fried and
smothered and covered. Yeah. Man. Like, so like doing that it wasn't just about what tasted differently or what I thought my body would like and respond to. It was like this cultural tension that I was having to break through too. Cause I was like, this can't all be wrong. You know, like I grew up with this. This is Mondays, red beans and rice. This is what we're supposed to do. We're cornbread, king cake, you know, beignets, whatever. All that stuff was part of my identity, you know, that I'd grown up with. And it's like now being, like you said, 41, I'm 40, as much as we're committed to this, it's still new in comparison to our lives, right? Like you started 10 years ago at 30. You said 3 decades preceding that with conditioning and habit and attachment and familiarity. Same thing for me. Like we still had 3 decades of like doing it that way and being around that. So it's still a challenge in a way that I have less time doing this and being familiar with it than I do in my previous, let's say, life of what was and how I used to be.
Yeah, you have to unlearn, and it's the system's built to kind of keep people into this mindset. And I even deal with it with my family. Luckily, my sister got on board, and she moved to Texas. She kind of rejected a lot of the things in LA and came here and started, you know, really getting into the nutrition scene and all this stuff. But my brother, like, he has a normal job and a wife, and it's hard to break out of that way of thinking, right? So it's set, that's what I'm saying. It's set up this way. If he starts rejecting these modern norms and thinking against certain things, he might lose his wife or his job.
Sure.
Especially in Hawaii, if you have these ideas of, I don't want to lock down for 2 years, you could lose your job. You could, you know, his family. So there's a lot on the line if you're stuck in the system. So it's hard for his brain. Even though he used to listen to my podcasts, he might still. I got to ask him if he stopped.
Well, you got 6 weeks to see him coming up.
Yeah, but he was all about it. You know, he's always kind of looked up to me and thought that I was, you know, doing cool things. Yeah. But then his brain kind of shut off when I was going against some of his beliefs, because I think he knew deep down it could threaten his livelihood.
It does. I mean, it threatens character identity. Like, who are you to tell me, Brian, that the way I eat is wrong? You're telling me my grandmother's food is wrong? You're telling me the culture that I was spoon-fed as a child from my mother's hand is wrong? Like, how dare you? You're telling me my religion is wrong? Like, that's all like the subtext and the subconscious subliminal messaging that people, I think, that we get offended by or that we defend. More so, you know, like in the Matrix, like it is a system, Neo, and they subscribe to this system, and so long as they are part of it, they will defend it, right, with what they know, because they don't know otherwise.
Well, and it's like, oh, so is my doctor wrong? Right? So you're saying that, that you're smarter than my doctor?
Exactly.
And I'm like, I'm not saying I'm smarter than your doctor. I just think your doctor was indoctrinated into a lot of things in medical school, and his training, his or her training for, you know, 10 years. And that was from the medical establishment that wants to sell you things. And that's just the money-making establishment that's been set up. And that started, decades ago.
I think about that too. Like, it's as difficult as it is on an individual level with someone like a brother or a friend who's got those levels of conditioning, those barriers between you and them, or the message, whether they're even able to receive it at that point, or they've got other people in their circle too. He's got a wife, he's got children. Like, it's not just a single individual decision. It affects multiple people. Well, what about an organization like, let's say, the World Health Organization or the American Cancer Society, American Medical Association, American Heart Association, that's been putting out a message and a narrative for generations that has spanned millions of patients and influenced millions of lives, either for better or for worse, because they've taken that advice as legitimate or to be the authority to do what, hey, eat this way, live this way, da-da-da. So for them to possibly say, shoot, we might have gotten that wrong, or like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have said that. Hey, maybe we should not have adopted the 7 countries Ansel Keys study and pumped that through the ACS, the MAA, the AHA. Like, maybe we should. There's no way that's ever going to be said, right? But like, how do you revise all that? I don't know if you actually do, but I do believe that this kind of like groundswell of awareness that seems to be taking place in places like Austin, places like Sapien Center, things with what you do in your social media channels, kind of seems to be the way that at least gets the conversation going.
It is. And the film series, it started as a film. So I always call it the film, but it turned into a series. So Food Lies is trying to do that, right? We're trying to give enough information and solid science to change people's minds, to give them the ammo that they can actually take it to their doctor or their family and say, well, watch this. Like, you don't have to, you might not agree with that right away, but at least we did our best to put it all in one place, 6 episodes, right? Just so many years of research, so many doctors and scientists. This information is out there that goes against the paradigms of the WHO and all these big organizations. It's just no one's put it all together in one place, right? So you and I know that we are on the right path. We don't have all the answers, but we realize that just doing things more naturally, generally, is correct.
Sure.
And it's hard to debate that. It's like, people, they're trying to get us to eat seed oils. There's all this propaganda in the mainstream against anyone who said that seed oils are bad. And it's just so weird if you take a step back. You're like, so I'm just trying to eat natural foods that we've always eaten. And you're telling me that I'm the crazy one, that I don't want this new modern, highly processed oil that takes 12 steps to deodorize and try to filter out
crazy amount of machinery and laboring to do that, of which all is inhumane or inhuman.
Yeah, everything about it is processed and not natural. And you're telling me that this is the way to be healthy, that humans were waiting for hundreds of thousands of years so that we could
found it. Yeah.
Wow, 1920s, we found out how to process cottonseed oil, and now this is the answer, and we're all going to be healthy. And I'm the crazy one for just saying, hey, what if we just ate natural fats, even olive oil or coconut oil, or just natural oils that exist from fruits that are easily processed into an oil.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have multi-step. You just turn them into oil.
Yeah.
And we're the crazy ones for wanting to eat the natural version.
Yeah, pretty much. It feels good to be crazy, though.
I love it.
If that makes me crazy, then I'm freaking totally whacked out. But what, obviously, you getting yourself kind of straightened out. You're in LA. 2020 is a weird time. That's when you came to Austin, then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, I had to wait till my lease ended.
Nice.
So
no force majeure.
I had to wait. Yeah, I waited. Yeah, it was 2021. So it was in the beginning of 2021. Yeah.
So what was it like? Those first few years in Hawaii, you're adopting, you're changing, you're growing, you're evolving. Obviously, there's probably a lot of good that came with moving to the mainland and being at UCLA and going into Los Angeles. Like, you got a pretty good vibrancy for food and like good sense of dietary consciousness there. Obviously, you got the extremes of whether it's vegan, carnivore, Whole Foods, whatever. Like, LA had to have been good to you in that sense, I imagine. But then once you get here, was nose to tail already a thought, or were you still worrying about yourself at the time?
No, I started nose to tail in LA, but then I came here to do the new version with ranchers that I started from scratch kind of to find my own ranchers. They were in Lubbock, so they were doing regenerative stuff for 30 years actually. They caught on early.
Sick,
so people have heard of Alan Savory. He's like kind of a leader in the worldwide movement of holistic management, regenerative ag. Yeah, he kind of invented a lot of these practices 30 years ago. And so my ranchers, the grandpa, took his first classes on holistic management and learned about how to, do the grazing and planned grazing and move the animals and all these principles. And so that was really cool to connect with these ranchers that did it properly, found some other people, and got that going. It's actually, I learned a lot about the world from that business because I actually stopped selling meat. So we still have body care products made from beef tallow and jerky products, but just the regular fresh meat. It's not profitable to sell meat or any other whole food, I figured out, right? So there's no profit margin on whole foods, right? It's like there's so much that goes into raising an animal properly, right? And so it gets to your rancher, and it's not like you go to the farmer's market and these guys are driving Maybachs, right? Like these ranchers are barely scraping by.
Right. And they're there with cardboard boxes and doing everything by hand, and everything's pretty much there because they have to be there. Sick, Scared, and Stupid is brought to you by Life Like Us, a brand dedicated to empowering individuals to reclaim their health, strength, and clarity in a world that often profits from confusion and compromise. Life Like Us believes in the power of self-determination and the pursuit of personal excellence. Their mission is to inspire a return to natural, unaltered lifestyles that support health the way nature intended. Each product is designed and produced proudly in the USA, using only the highest quality materials to share a meaningful message. By choosing Life Like Us, you're not just purchasing apparel. You're joining a movement that values discipline, self-actualization, and the courage to take control of your health. Visit thelifelikeus.com to explore the full collection and become part of a community dedicated to clarity, strength, and truth.
Yes. And then the opposite of that are the big food companies
that are driving Maybachs and private jets. And
exactly. So I always use a cereal example, right? The cereal, the cereals cost like 5 cents. The box, I think, costs more than the cereal, right? You get like a 7-cent box and then you sell it for $5.
Yeah.
Right. So times billions.
Yeah.
And they make so much money on that, right? The profit margin could be 90%, right? Over 80%. Profit margin on meat, 10%.
Yes.
Anything like strawberries. What's a profit margin on strawberries? Like 10%. What's a profit margin on lettuce?
Yeah.
What's a profit eggs? None of these
people
things
don't
have
understand
profit
like just what goes into farm. They're like, well, how could it be like just hello, diesel fuel alone? Diesel is not cheap. Water is not cheap. Like land, it costs money. Like raising like animals, all the things that go into that, like you said, the process. It's like none of it is inexpensive.
Yes, and what's super inexpensive is processing grains, especially subsidized grains, and turning them into food-like substances and selling them to people. And so that's what I said. I learned about the world. Everything in the store, in the middle aisles, and in the boxes and packages has a huge profit margin.
Yeah.
And so with that huge profit margin, they can do all the marketing. They can do the fake studies to say that it's fine. You just have to count calories and it's your fault if you didn't count calories well enough. And they can do lobbying to keep the systems the way they are. So pretty much like having my meat business not work out was a good thing in a sense where it taught me how the world works.
Empathy.
Yeah, really. Yeah, now I realize. Yeah, more I want to support the local ranchers and stuff. So, and just you just acutely can see how the world works once you understand the profit margins and how big they are with processed foods or pharmaceuticals compared to even the other side of things with healthcare or healing. I know doctors that try to go away from that model and they barely make any money, or they have to go back to the insurance model because there's no money in just providing actual healthcare where you get rid of the problems at the root cause.
Right. A patient healed is a customer lost.
Exactly. There's a few people out there, you can make some money if you have the right programs and if you have a high profile. There's a few people, obviously, in the space, right, that do good medicine and they make a living. Not many people. Most doctors have huge medical bills, loans, right? All the student loans, and they have to pay them off. They have huge overheads of a practice, and they have to just go in the insurance model and just do the same old thing.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're not going to generate the revenue that they need. They're not going to be able to cover any of the costs, like you said, underneath any of that. What about? It's really cool to hear that. Like, I don't want to call it a failure, but to be like, wow, what an amazing lesson learned. How do you see them doing it then? Like for the farmers that do make it, are they just really? Is it passion that drives them? Purpose, circumstance, and then what are they as far as in getting home? Like what is their margin? What is their profit margin?
So some people are making it. Gabe Brown is kind of well known. He's more than 5,000 acre farm. He actually got his farm ruined by hail years and years in a row, and had to go against the system by force majeure, actually, right? So he did it. Guys like Joel Salatin, Will Harris, like these are great people. Well, those two are going to be in the film series, and they're doing it by, a lot of work, creating their own brands, creating their own awareness, like doing content, right? People know of Joel Salatin's in documentaries for years, and Will Harris is, went on Joe Rogan podcast, all this stuff. So they also, Gabe Brown told me, I first talked to him 7 years ago on the phone, and he said, there's hope because these big companies are actually paying me as a consultant to try to change over to some of the regenerative methods because they want, for money. So they realize that there's a need for it. There's a want for it. Right? So now that grass-fed meat has become more popular, regenerative, people are asking for it. Now the big companies are putting more money to it. So there kind of is a good thing about that, is that with more demand and, the whole thing of voting with your dollar, it actually works. Like if you buy more of the good products, the big companies will realize that and start to change their ways and try to, they want to make more money.
Yeah, of course. And certainly like being able to recognize competition, even if it's in an infant state, to see like, hey, if this gets big enough, it could pose a potential threat, like Siete chips, for example. Like you tell me that company was actually valuated at $1.2 billion? Not a chance. Not a chance. Not with every bag in the world, not with every bit of infrastructure, not with every building, not with every asset. No way. But Pepsi saw that as what they valued the company at. To me, it's in the form of competition, right? Like that is a viable threat. So it's better for us to just purchase, acquire, and possibly either dilute or otherwise kind of just dissolve within the PepsiCo brand to where they're not a potential competitor against us, like whether or not the company does well within Pepsi, but it's the fact that like, hey, we see you as worth $1 billion to hush you kind of thing. So I think, like just seeing that with grocery stores around, like Central Market didn't exist but a few years ago. The amount of more Whole Foods prevalences there are, Jimbo's in Southern California, Sprouts, like those are there because of the pressure that is put on by, I think, the farmers markets and what Whole Foods kind of created, and then what these other stores kind of have. That's becoming more and more the norm. Like the other day, shopping at Whole Foods, looking at some of the prepared food, I saw way more olive oil than what I used to see in prepared food. Like the Whole Foods prepared food used to be a minefield, still is a pretty good minefield of ingredients, but lots of expeller pressed canola oil, different types of soybean oil, just all kind of garbage in food that shouldn't have had it in the first place and could have been fine with olive oil, but saw a lot of olive oil in prepared food. And I was like, one of the chefs was on the line. I was like, hey man, if you guys changed up some of we've been trying to mix in more olive. I was like, freaking awesome. Like, that's cool. Like, that to me is the beginning of acknowledgement. That is like them saying, hey, we hear you out there, or like, hey, we're trying to, or if we don't adapt, we'll die.
I saw a tweet yesterday, In-N-Out said, hey guys, a lot of you are saying we should use beef tallow in the fryers now. And so, the company put that out. And so, people are listening.
Nice.
So, I think it's kind of good and kind of bad. Like you're kind of saying, it could be some of them just trying to put them out of business. And there's always a risk of greenwashing. If people have heard of that term, right? It's like they're pretending it's healthy, making health claims, but they're not actually interested in health or doing all the right practices. But
just the social, political, cultural pressure.
But it is, there is a movement going on. So there is some positivity there.
I like, it reminds me of, I worked in corporate compliance before I do what I do now, and seeing all of the efforts for environmental consciousness and sustainable practices regarding like waste and recyclable materials and ethical sourcing. I was like, do these companies really care about this, or is it just the social pressure that's making them all have to say, we're green in this way, our carbon footprint is less in that way, we have, X amount favorable labor, et cetera, et cetera. It's probably 50-50. Would they have done it if they had to? I don't know. But the fact that they have to now, like, they're pretty good about it. So whether it's compensatory or not, I don't know, but nonetheless. But with this, compensatory or not, good. Because if it's people promoting and advocating for healthier practices, like example with the tallow, the pushback is going to be that it costs more money, potentially, right? But that's really the only barrier of entry, because essentially it's making a better product, flat out. It is improving the quality of the product that they sell or produce, straight up. You are not going to lose a customer segment based off of that. Meaning like, okay, if we stop using this type of peanut oil or soybean oil, we're going to lose 90% of our customers because they're loyal to the oil. No. Like, would your numbers have to change, or the cost of what you sell these items for? I don't think so. I think they would just rework things elsewhere within the menu or within their companies. But to think that you're not going to lose a customer or a percentage of your customer group because you changed to beef tallow, if anything, you're going to gain the ones that aren't going to, because they're avoiding the other things. So to me, it's like, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, because it's probably a little more difficult to do than just, hey, let's just switch everything over. But I see that as a huge potential for upside.
They used to use, McDonald's used to use beef tallow.
Yeah, we grew up eating it.
Yeah, there was actually kind of a vegan, it was a CSPI, and it was like this kind of vegan organization that lobbied McDonald's and all the restaurant chains to stop using animal fat and beef tallow. So yes, it's definitely possible. We can just go back to it.
Now, you might lose your vegan customers doing that with tallow for your fries.
There's actually not that many vegans in the world. It's an absurd thing, and it's a few people that make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
But you're going to gain a lot of people that, I mean, you could probably even sell it for a little more because you're the one chain that's using beef tallow.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more desirable. I mean, you could make more money. That's kind of
I would test it one versus the other. Like keep the
do
oil,
a couple
keep
stores
the
or
oil
something.
in some, and then have like, hey, we also have tallow oil fryers, and like sell those at a premium and see how they sell.
Yeah, I think they'd get a lot more business, and I think it tastes better. And
knowing it's better for me. I mean, all those boxes get checked. So like, you go through the evolution of nose to tail, and now you're at Sapien Center. What was that like getting it off the ground? Was it immediately welcomed by was the community welcomed by the community, or like did you have resistance to that?
Well, I kind of was an outsider a little bit, right? I came from LA. And
were they like, oh, California, like
no, because I was one of the good ones. I say, like, I wasn't bringing California vibes.
Nice.
I was bringing Hawaii vibes.
Nice.
To Texas. Yeah. No, it was great. No, I knew some of these health people. It is a grind though. All these businesses are hard. Like any business, and especially one that it's one by one, like trying to get members, make events happen. But it was great. Yeah, I had a lot of good support from the community. People just wanted it. The only thing is there's a lot of these popping up, right? So if you look around town, there's a lot of these now. So, which is a good thing, right? I don't mind. There's a lot of options for people.
Sure.
And we're figuring it out. It's just, there's room for everyone. And it's better to just get everyone involved or the rising tide raises all ships. It's like, let's get more of these places. Let's get this more well-known. And then there'll be more customers if it's more well-known.
Right. And like, is it I mean, obviously in the competitive sense of as a business owner, you want to have as much blue ocean as you can and acquire as much market space as possible. Sure. But the reality is you're never going to maintain blue ocean forever, and it's going to get red at some point. Similarly to coaching and health coaching. I hope there's a million more. Great. Like super saturated marketplace with people concerned about their health. Fantastic. Like, sure, maybe we're competing with each other, but like if that's the influence or seeming like the swell that's building of more and more people wanting to be healthy, wanting to be at places like yours and so other things, I think it's a great problem. Again, on the books, maybe you got to figure some things out, how to separate yourself from competition. But the fact that there's more of that, I agree, I think is awesome. So what, you started working on Food Lies in LA. It comes to Texas. When did you say at some point were you like, hey, for sure we got a movie or a series, I want to put together here?
Well, I mean, it was a long road. I actually had to redo a lot of it. So I started filming 7 years ago. Started filming, what's today? Almost exactly 7 years ago. Sean Baker was my first interview. He went on Joe Rogan's podcast on December 8th, 2017. So
it was right after that.
I interviewed him the day before. He went on Joe Rogan.
Okay.
So he came to LA to go on. So that was when carnivore was introduced to the world. No one really knew what it was until he went on the show.
That was my intro.
Yeah. And so it's been since then, and it's just this slow process of collecting interviews. But I actually started redoing them because they weren't good enough. It's sort of, got a higher quality videographer and all this. And I actually changed a lot of my thinking since then, right? Like I was saying before, people who, they get into the health world because the first thing worked for them. And then you think that that's the only way. And so part of my journey was being open-minded, not being biased, being really, open to being wrong and listening to new perspectives. Yeah. So I think that's
what got you
useful
there in the first place.
Well, yeah, I had to think of know that the mainstream is wrong, but then I even had to be more curious and discerning about, well, what about this stuff that I'm learning? I don't want to get stuck in this one way of thinking and to think that I'm right. So I did kind of zoom out more over the years and realize that there's a bigger picture than just saying like carbs are bad, right? This is like the first paradigm that I was kind of stuck in, and I avoided a lot of carbs and I got healthier and it felt amazing. And then along the way, I was like, wait a second, well, why do some other populations do okay eating carbs? I'm like, oh, well, they're actually eating whole food carbs. They're not eating processed carbs. And like, or why do even the bodybuilding community, they're eating rice and different, carbs and protein, and they're doing fine and they can lean out. So it's like, I didn't want to be wrong, right? And if I'm going to put this out into the world, I didn't want to be wrong, right?
Sure.
I didn't want to be debunked. So there's more nuance there. So it's super helpful to zoom out and realize that there's many ways of doing things, but there's like all good diets kind of have something in common. And that's kind of this nutrient density, or being reliant on whole foods. So you could look at a vegetarian diet. So I don't believe in vegan diets at all. But say there was a Mediterranean kind of plant-based more approach. Some people can do well on that, right? I'm like, so how does that work? And if you look into it more, they're eating fish and other seafood. They're eating saturated fat. They're using olive oil. Yeah. They're eating whole foods. They're eating fresh, local fruits and vegetables. Yeah, and they're not drinking soda, right? They're not eating the refined sugars, oils, stuff like that. So
the wheat is hand cultivated.
Yeah, it's not covered in glyphosate, right? They're over in Europe. So it actually is a bit similar to how we eat. It's just we're maybe leaning more into red meat and eggs, but like not everyone has to do that. This is the kind of thing, it's a great option. I think it's the best option. Yeah. But if you're eating a whole bunch of seafood and other whole foods, you're actually getting a good nutrient dense diet.
Absolutely.
Right? And if that's what you're going to do, then do that. Or, if you're going to be vegetarian for certain religious views and you don't want to eat red meat, well, I hope you really get into kefir and eggs and dairy. You know what I mean? Get all the good animal nutrition you can from
the other places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was super helpful along the way. And now we're going to have a much better series that will reach a lot more people, right?
What was it like before?
It was just more in this low carb world, right? It's just like, this is the answer. And people have tried to make these films before. I've watched most of them and they haven't gone anywhere. You know, that they'll go on a platform, or maybe they'll just go straight to whatever, YouTube or a direct to consumer, and they don't make a buzz. Like no one's ever heard of them. Yeah. So I didn't want to do that. And I realized, because it is a way, it's just not the only way, right? So if I can give people a more broader perspective, then I'm not going to be wrong. I'm going to include more people. Yeah. And this can just really last the test of time and be more helpful to everyone. So really it turned from more of like this low carb, or just, it's not all low carb, but just generally that world, to more of, it really is about nutrient density, which is a deeper discussion, because not everyone knows what nutrient density is, or the right version of that. Because some vegans will say the nutrient density, and they're talking about eating plants. I'm like,
right. Or you can say like, well, dark chocolate is extremely rich in nutrient density. Like, well, richness and nutrient density are not the same.
Yeah, or like they're like spinach is the pinnacle of nutrient density. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a pinnacle. It's of oxalates is what it is.
Right.
So yeah, you have to go a little bit deeper, and yeah, there's a lot more there to discuss. It's more of a whole foods versus processed foods type of discussion. So some people make it into the plants versus animal war, and I was a little bit in that mindset too before. Right, where I'm like, we need to take down all the vegans, and we're like the meat people. That's not the story. That wouldn't go mainstream, really. Maybe it could, just because it's sort of controversial.
Bipolar,
but it's not, because then so many people would be turned off by it, because they were like, oh, did you see that carnivore film?
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, I can have some of the carnivores in it, but it's not the carnivore film. Yeah. It's the real war is between whole foods and processed foods. And within that, you learn about how red meat is actually healthy, saturated fat is good. And, we can get all of our messages in there, but it's just the framing of it is way better.
Definitely. Nice. Well, good. It's good. Yeah. Well, good to hear that it's evolved. I'm sure that I can't wait to see the final. I agree pretty much with a lot of what you're saying. Remember the movie The Lost Boys?
Yeah.
Vampire movie when we were kids. Like, it's one of my favorite movies. I love that movie. The scene when they're eating rice and he's just drank some of the blood, so he's kind of starting to hallucinate, and Kiefer Sutherland's like, have some rice, Michael. He's like, what? He's like, how could a billion Chinese people be wrong? I think about that all the time, man.
Yeah.
All the time. That stupid line from that movie, I think about it all the time, because just like we were saying, in the bodybuilding world, we fucking lived on rice. Yeah, definitely. White rice, jasmine rice, basmati rice, lived on it. For 99% of people that have chronic disease or other types of dietary related illness or metabolic syndrome or anything within that, for 99% of them, whole foods did not do that to them. A whole foods diet. So whether that's vegetables, fruits, meat, anything that you can pick, pull, or kill, did not do that to them. So I used to be very forward on the carnivore foot, as far as, and this is the only way, this is the way, plants are definitely trying to kill you. Like, they're rooted to the ground. They have toxins. All those things are true. Not to say that they're not, but people are not dying in the world, and especially not in this country, are not getting morbidly obese and just chronically sick, and children suffering with 30% obesity rates as they are now, are not getting that way because they ate too many strawberries. They're not getting that way because they ate too much spinach. They're not getting that way because they ate too many potatoes, period. So I'm with you in the sense that, like, if it's something I can pick, pull, or kill, like, to kind of give someone a perspective, live within these kind of concentric rings of, if I can pick it, pull, or kill it, that's a huge place you can roam. That's a really big place you can operate within. Now, if you've got some sensitivities, maybe some issues with something, you're trying to improve an autoimmune condition like a psoriasis or eczema, anything topical or on the skin, for sure, start eliminating things. Start getting rid of vegetables. Start getting rid of, grains, especially. Even if they are natural, organic, or artisanal, still, if they're American, you got to be very wary of that. So like when you can go circle within the circle to like a very tight animal-based diet or a carnivore diet, yeah, it'll give you a great perspective of like establishing baseline. Wow, now I know how my body reacts and responds, and then I can start reintroducing things singularly to see, oh my God, blueberries I'm good with. Oh, onions not so good. But when you're too broadly scoped with things coming in from all directions, many of which are going to be processed, yeah, you're going to feel fucked up. Like you're not going to feel good. But once you remove those things, and I used to think it had to be this elimination diet. It had to be a carnivore diet or ruminant meat, salt and water only. They're great levers to pull. They're great tools to utilize. And for some people, that's all they ever need and all they'll ever want. God bless, rock on. But to say that all those other things are bad necessarily, I won't say that. I was kind of leaning towards that camp at one point, but like, I'm not going to say that just because it wasn't made by nature, God, the creator, whatever, the higher power, didn't create these things for us to be poisoned by them. We disrupted these things and created other things around them that poison ourselves, just like with the sun. You know, the sun is, I don't know for how many billions of years old, and all of a sudden it's giving us problems with our skin. How about something we're doing with it is causing these issues to happen? Meaning, well, we ingest a certain food, that food permeates through our pores and creates this type of oil on our skin, and that oil gets microwaved and radiated by this microwave and radiator, doing what it was naturally meant to do. But with how we've manipulated its power, it has caused problems to us by way of cancer and other issues. But to say that the sun is all of a sudden bad, how fucking ridiculous, right? So the same thing with whole foods is what I'm saying, is that people aren't dying because they ate too many strawberries. People are not chronically sick from eating too much okra, right? Yes, could you have problems? Maybe you get a little gassy, you get a little inflamed, you respond or react. Yes. Use an elimination diet then. And then to your vegans out there, yeah, unless you're a raw vegan, you're eating a hell of a lot of processed food.
Yes, that rice thing is pretty close to what happened to me, where I just was like, how can all these people be surviving on this and it be the problem? Or the bodybuilders, how are they getting shredded with this food?
With this high glycemic index.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I was thinking about it, and it always bothered me. And so I was making excuses like, oh, well, it's because of this or that, or, oh, they're just getting away with it temporarily. But yeah, it takes a while for you to like zoom out and realize that the nutrient density thing, it really is, I've kind of landed on this nutrient to energy idea, and it's a nutrient to energy ratio. So it gets a little nerdy, and I don't know if it's for everyone, because some people just want to hear, okay, we'll just eat meat, eggs, and fish and some local
Keep it as
produce,
macro as you can for me.
local produce, and they'll just do it. But I've always been interested in why, right? So kind of the engineer type of thing again. Like I want to know why. And so if you learn about the nutrient to energy ratio, you'll kind of realize why this animal-based diet with whole foods is the answer. And so I say food is four things, right? It's protein, it's vitamins and minerals, and then there's fats and carbs. This is generally what food is. And your body doesn't care the name of your diet. Yep. It doesn't know. It just wants the protein and vitamins and minerals to build itself, and it wants fats and carbs to power it for energy, right? And so for all of history, we've ate foods around us, and with our instincts have always wanted to kill animals and eat them and get eggs and fish and all this. So we've gotten all of the nutrients we needed. Nutrients I just classify as protein, vitamins, and minerals, right? Protein being the most important nutrient. And then we've gotten the right amount of energy. If you eat foods around you, you don't need to count calories. We never had food scales and macro apps and all these insane things. So correct amount of nutrients, correct amount of energy to get us through the day. Now, if people can see my hands, and if they can't, it's switched. Now the nutrients and protein are super low in most people's diets, and the energy is super high. Yeah. So if you just eat what foods are around you nowadays,
you are overfed but undernourished.
100%. And all the processed foods, the good stuff has been taken out. The protein is expensive, like we were talking about earlier. None of the foods in the center of the aisles have a lot of quality protein in them. It doesn't make sense. The protein is fresh.
It's not fresh.
Yeah. So, I mean, whey protein, that's a different story. But you got to focus on the nutrient to energy ratio, when you're eating the wrong foods, you're mathematically screwed, right? So if you just try to make a diet out of 80% processed foods, what most people do, even 50% processed foods, you're mathematically screwed because the nutrient, you're not getting enough. So there's only two options, right? Either you're going to get all the protein and nutrients you need and therefore have to overeat these processed foods because they're diluted, right? So they come
which calorically debits the hell out of you now.
Yes. So there is something to do with calories. I reject counting calories and there's more nuance, but
I just mean by like the energy imbalance is massive.
Well, yeah. So if you're going to eat the foods that are the wrong nutrient to energy ratio, which are bad, processed foods, you're either going to have to, your body is driven to eat enough protein and nutrients. So therefore you would have to overeat the energy side, whether it's from fats or carbs, usually processed fats and carbs, and you would gain weight, or you would force yourself to be hungry, not get enough, and therefore you'd be, and try to balance your energy in your calories, but you would be short on nutrients. You'd be short on protein. It's just simple math, right? So some people can eat normal diets and just restrict for a short period of time, and they can lose weight, right? I get it, right? There's many people that have lost weight and they're just like, oh, I'm just counting calories now. And oh, I went on the Weight Watchers diet. I'm like, yes, it can work temporarily, but you are short on protein and nutrients. You are hungry. You are going to get other problems.
You get a high burn rate.
Yes, it's not going to work long term. And that's why the statistics are, 96% of diets fail, 98. That's because people are arbitrarily cutting calories and it's just not going to work. So to lose weight, if people are interested in that, it's really simple. You need to get all of your nutrients for less energy. And how do you do that? Well, you eat meat, fish, eggs, and local fresh produce. And that's it. And if you eat all those foods, you're getting all the nutrients you need, but you're not getting the excess empty calories. Like my grandma told me years ago, my mom told me years ago, don't eat empty calories. And after 10 years
guess
of
what?
this,
Nature doesn't make any.
They don't. No. What humans make it. These are processed foods that can, like sodas, chips. This is just pure empty calories. So it's so funny that after 10 years, it's like it could be almost as simple as just listening to my grandma to not eat empty calories. Because if you don't eat empty calories, you can't eat sugar, refined grains, or seed oils. You're not eating any of the processed foods, and you're just going to be eating, an animal-based diet, produce. Yeah, exactly. So it is as simple as that. But there is some science to it, and it makes sense. And so now I think of diet in a longer term of like a month's time. And I'm kind of doing some math on the nutrient to energy ratio of my foods as I build a meal or over the course of the month. So I'm actually not super worried about every single meal right? It's like, I'm like, if I am getting a foundation of protein at each meal, and, you can kind of see it. It's not like you're like doing math and counting calories. It's just like, all right, I'm getting a chunk of meat.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to have some stuff around it.
Some Brussels sprouts and some roasted potatoes and cauliflower, and I had some watermelon on the side. And I was like, this looks
amazing.
right. Yeah.
That's exactly what I would eat. And and if you actually did the math on it, it would be right? It's just, this is enough protein and nutrients, and it's the correct amount of energy.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Yep. Yeah. It's not having to tiptoe through it and liquid calories, empty calories, just nature by default packages everything perfectly for us, like a piece of fruit. It comes with a skin, or it comes with a sheath,
the water,
or a peel, and it's got the correct amount of water. It's got the deliverable method for you. It's got the right carrier capacity to get it into you. It's diluted, or not diluted, rather. It's concentrated in the right dosage to where you're going to receive things in the proper ratios. You don't have to. Somebody asked me that today. What do you think about creatine supplements? And I was like, let me say this about all supplements for that matter. For 99% of people, we don't need them if you just eat the right food. Mm-hmm. Nature will Mother Nature provides it for you. Like for 99% of us, our needs are met by way of whole food. But the world around us tells us otherwise. So the compelling sense of need is a much different influence than the true visceral sense of it. I know you got to get out of here, about to hit a 6-week pilgrimage back to Hawaii. Anything you're really looking forward to there? Worried about maybe before we get you out of here?
Oh man, I'm just trying to finish Food Lies. Really, I'm going home. I work on it. My director editor is back there.
Nice.
Uh,
In Hawaii?
in Hawaii.
Oh, nice.
And so we always work on it more intensively
So
when I'm
6
home.
weeks, you're probably really going to put some time in.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we think about this stuff all the time. I mean, all we do is talk. We have meetings every single day of the
Cool.
week, and just keep going on these concepts, always learning,
Nice.
right? Trying to get the best people involved in the film, getting the best concepts, doing motion graphics, there's so much to this. We're trying to, it's like the ultimate audio-visual thesis that you can hand to someone. It's like, how could I, right? I'm thinking about it, like, I didn't want to make a documentary.
Very utilitarian then.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to spend 7 years of my life not making any money. It's like, I don't make any money off Food Lies.
You certainly give it out. You certainly handed it out to do it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but why do I do it? It's because this is going to be the ultimate audiovisual thesis of everything that our community wants to say.
Yeah.
And it needs to be done, and it's hard, and no one else has done it.
You need a one
It's so
sheet.
hard.
You
It is.
need
It's
a one sheet.
Exactly. It's the ultimate one sheet. And it's like, well, we're trying to go against your cardiologist. Well, how are we going to do that? It needs to be very compelling.
Right.
And the ultimate, it's not going to be a book, I don't think, because I don't know how many people are going to read a book.
Yeah.
So it's like, if we make it into
our literary attention spans are shot. Yeah.
and still, yeah. So in modern society, the best way to do that is to put out a series, especially
Totally.
even bite size instead of one long thing.
Yeah.
Let's break it down. Let's give this to your cardiologist. Hopefully they will be like, wait a second, this is making sense. Like, we go through everything. We start from the beginning.
Yeah.
We're starting with humans back 300,000 years ago. And how did our bodies change? How did we become human? How do we get these big brains?
Yeah.
Why do we have a digestive system that requires the nutrient-dense animal food?
Why are we so acidic in the stomach?
Exactly. We go through all this in episode 1, right? We started off and we go through that science of our guts changing, or the acidity, even there's fossil records. Due to nitrogen isotope testing, we could see that we were eating mostly animal foods for much of history, right? Like we can see this and why our guts changed and why our brains got bigger. We're taking people through the agricultural revolution and what happened when we started introducing all these grains in
Which,
our diet.
folks, was not that long ago.
Yeah, it's only a couple percent of history, right? 12,000 years ago is about 3% of human history. And what changed then? We got shorter, our brains got smaller, we got more disease, right? We didn't know that you couldn't just eat a whole bunch of grains and just be fine, right? It's like, Jared Diamond is a famous author and historian that said it was the greatest mistake in human history, that agriculture was the greatest mistake in human history. Because we didn't know that it was just very low nutrition. If you're just eating a whole bunch of grains, even if they were properly raised, it's still not good nutrition. Sure. It's calories that will let us survive. But for much of history, we were just after calories to let us survive recently, and we were not doing well. Yeah. Dark ages, our population height went down. Much of history, we got shorter, like really short. And then even up until World War II, and then we started getting taller again when we got better nutrition. And yeah, there's a whole other rabbit hole in population height and how that I wrote some articles about, and we're putting a little bit in the film too. Is that the populations that eat the higher protein? It's a directly linear relationship between the average population height, and the amount of animal protein they eat. Right, so the Norwegians, right, the Scandinavian countries, super tall, tons of meat. Right, that down in Southeast Asia, shortest people, low meat. Right, so it's the one more piece of the puzzle, because some people are like, oh, well, I just want to be whole foods and I'm going to just be more plant-based. And I'm like, yes, you'll probably do fine, but is that optimal? And when you start looking at some of this other data, you'll see that it really does point to higher protein, higher animal nutrition that will make you thrive. So yeah, whole nother little subject here at the end, but it's important to really want to thrive and not just survive, and like look at these smaller details. So, well, I guess I'll just go through quickly the rest of the film. Is right. So we're going through all the stories. We're going through the bad science that you mentioned, Ansel Keys, 7 countries. We mentioned all that stuff. How did we get this stuff wrong? What is the new science that actually shows that we were wrong that saturated fat is fine. So now there is some new studies that show cholesterol is not the problem, saturated fat's fine, red meat's not the problem. Just no one knows about these studies. They're not coming out in the mainstream. And then we go into just how to make this super useful and solid advice to, how to do this, right? How to implement in your life, what kind of meals, just really simple stuff, a lot of good stories along the way. And then we get into environment ethics at the end and start talking to these guys like Joel Salatin and Will Harris and how we can do this correctly, regeneratively, and go debunk a lot of the vegan propaganda that's out there. So yeah, this whole thing is going to do it all. And that's why it's taking so long.
It sounds like it'll be worth it. Can you tease us with a potential release date, though?
2025.
Okay.
So I can't say more than
so
that.
next year?
Next year, yes. I think it will be done. We got a producer supposedly on board that does a lot of big things that will help us get it out there in a big way.
Well, stoked to see it, man. Can't wait, and really appreciate the time today. I'm glad you stopped in. I'm glad we got you before you head on to your 6-week pilgrimage to the island to work and do your thing. So really appreciate you being here today, Brian.
Thanks, man.
And for everybody else, be able to check out Brian in the show notes, everything he's attached with through Food Lies, the Sapien Center, and all the other organizations he's part of. Again, I'm Jake Thomas for another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. We'll see you next time.